Chapter 3 Theoretical Considerations 1. Xing, Xin, and Qi. Within the Daoist cosmology, there is a concept that heaven and earth separated, and when that happened, man occupied the center. The separation of heaven and earth represents the emergence of yin and yang. The man at the center is the consciousness. With the power to unite these two polarities, and become united with them. This potential consciousness, capable of joining heaven and earth and becoming one with both of them, is the prerogative of the human being, distinguishing him from all other living beings of the universe. However, humanity has been gradually losing this condition as it provokes more and more separation between yin and yang, instead of working to unite them. To unite yin and yang is to unite Xin and Qi, two basic elements of life, which when seized separately are the cause of dual-level consciousness, but when united elevate that same dual-level consciousness to a level of unity. In the dual world, life is generated by contrary aspects. Beings interact in a permanent opposition, constantly playing contemporary roles to one another. People are always on one side of the issue or situation, looking to one another. Looking to the other side. One who lives in the dual world can never be inside of the outside one at the same time, looking at oneself at other beings simultaneously. However, above this diversified and dualist world in which human beings live, there is a world of oneness, which is indivisible, and infinite. And there is also the world of the absolute, with the omnipotence of all existence, knocking down the barrier of duality, looking both at oneself and at all beings simultaneously, being everyone looking at everyone, oneself included, represents the attainment of oneness. But until that happens, everyone is in the dual world. Oneness can be understood at the highest spiritual level of fusion between Xin and Qi. It's symbolized by the number 1, realized within the reach of universal consciousness, or pure consciousness, and represented by the Taiji, which is just the yin-yang symbol that I feel is common for everyone to know and understand. He who unites pure spirit and breath achieves this state of oneness. And then there's a figure of the Taiji, which is the yin-yang symbol. And on the white side, it's the yang of the posterior heaven, and the black dot within that white side is the yin of the anterior heaven. On the black side, that is the yin of the posterior heaven, and the white within the black is the yang of the anterior heaven. And then moving back on to the paragraphs. But, as well as the universal consciousness, or Taiji, there is a kind of emptiness or stillness called Xing or nature, which precedes the fusion of Xin with the Qi, because it precedes the separation of the two. This is the highest level of purity that one can reach on the Taoist spiritual path. If the universal consciousness corresponds to 1, Xing, which is anterior to it, corresponds to 0, or the absolute. The 1 may be broken down into 2, 3, 4, or more. And then the 4 can go back to being 3, 2, or 1. Just like in the mathematical operations of multiplication and division, applied at the level of the quantitative hierarchy of Xin and Qi, but the Xing is but the Xing, as it is the zero, and it is the emptiness. It is not subjected. It is not subject to this alteration because Xing does not change. Following this reasoning, one can understand that the consciousness or the energy of the human being can occupy a higher or lower level of spirituality or spiritual quality, closer or further from the Tao. Meanwhile, the Xing, which is the primordial nature that exists before all existence, will never change level. A person's consciousness may be more lucid or less lucid, and his energy heavier or lighter. Both may be more united or more dispersed. And the person may be very simple or very complex. All these characteristics are manifestations of the spirit or of the breath at different levels. But a personal Xing, which is the same Xing of all beings, remains immutable and absolute. To recover the level of the united breath and spirit as the universal consciousness, and subsequently raise them to a condition of Xing nature or Tao, is precisely the objective of the heart purification method. That is why when oneness is attained, where the contemplator and the contemplated merge and become one reaches a very high level on the path. Nevertheless, the spiritual realization of the practitioner will still not be complete. At this point, he continues with the meditation work, and from then on accelerates the process of expanding his consciousness, which is no longer limited by ego, to potentially become as extensive as the emptiness. This is made possible because if the breath at its highest spiritual level reaches the size of the emptiness, the consciousness, which is part of it, will grow too, accompanying the breath and naturally reaching the extensiveness of the emptiness. To reach Xing or Tao, nothing is more important than meditating, and being this practice. And to begin this practice, one needs only spirit and breath, two elements that every human being in good health possess. I'm sorry for tripping up on all that. There's a lot of this chapter is just crazy with some things where it's like, Anyhow, 2. Tao. Within Taoism, the word Tao has two meanings. In a philosophical sense, oops, Tao means primordial nature or absolute, as the origin of life. In the literal sense, it means path. But it is like a road that needs three simultaneous active elements to make it real: the road itself, the person, and the person walking on the road. This set of concepts refer to the idea that in order to find and understand the Tao, one must live one's search. Only by living and becoming a part of the Tao is it possible to understand its true meaning. The precise meaning which it applies to the spiritual path of a Taoist, therefore, is the follower assimilating slowly but surely the meaning of the Tao, while also living its precepts. And if Tao is the path or absolute, Taoism is the spiritual path which leads its followers to begin reunited with the absolute. 3. Emptiness. During deep meditation, at the moment when Shin and the Qi merge and remain united, the practitioner's mental and breathing activities completely vanish. He ceases to have, though, thoughts because he is transported from a level of mind to a level of pure consciousness, where there are no thoughts and feelings, and his breathing becomes practically unperceivable as it progresses from the level of physical breathing to a highly subtle level of pure breath. Here, the practitioner achieves absolute stillness. He remains sitting still, but ceases to feel his physical body and mind. Only the notion of himself as is the subtle and smooth breathing, pulsating in an immense space which has no beginning, end, or size. Taoism calls this state the emptiness, primordial chaos, or the anterior heaven. Within it, there is only a spiritual energy, which is the splendid breath, referred to by Taoist masters as Tao Qi, the breath of Tao. It is the same state as that which precedes the creation of the universe, where there is no physical body, breathing, or thoughts. Upon arriving at this stage, one returns to the origin of all existence, including one's own. The energy of this state has no form because it's breath, which has yet to be manifested in any sense or idea. Thus, one who attains this energy requires this characteristic and also ceases to perceive himself as a form. He no longer feels his physical body, his mind, or his breathing. 4. Emptiness as purifier of the heart. In this context, the heart represents personal feelings. In the Chinese language, the heart ideogram also means mind or consciousness. That is why the heart purification method may be translated as, well, let me reread that sentence because I've just been translating it off the rip. That is why Zin Zai Fa, hopefully got that close, may be translated as purification of the heart method or purification of the mind method. This technique prompts purification by emptying the mind of excess thoughts and feelings. And this emptying is carried out as consequence of figurative image of cleaning brought about by the air of the person's breathing. When his consciousness is forced on that breathing. Okay. Excessive thoughts, feelings are the attachments, the angers, and the irritations. Yeah. The envies and bitterness, the traumas, repression, neurosis, and complex, all the negative feelings kept and piled up in the heart for a long or short period of time, hidden or blossoming throughout a lifetime. During meditation, the energy allied to this consciousness acquired the power to penetrate the person's mind, gradually removing the excess, leaving in its place higher level of consciousness and energy. This is the continuous process of emptying or purification. That is why the emptier the mind, the deeper the penetration of the breath, and the more extensive the purification. By persevering with the method, the process will reach the most intimate corners of the practitioner's heart and transform his egotistic soul into an enlightened spirit. The emptier it is, the more purified the heart becomes. And to empty the heart, one must only observe two basic precepts of the heart purification method. To sit in silence, preferably in the lotus position, and to concentrate the mind on the air that one breathes. The prospect of completely emptying the mind, however, can generate feelings of apprehension and dampen the enthusiasm of the person inclined to adopt this method. But this concern is unfounded feeling. Although it is correct to say that purification or purified heart is emptied heart, this state does not propose the absence of consciousness, but rather the existence of a higher level consciousness. Instead of eliminating the consciousness, the constant practice of the purification method works to raise the level of the practitioner's mind. The underlying points of the method is precisely the faculty which works to empty the heart, but only the impurities. The person is not transformed into a vegetable being, incapable of thinking or feeling. On the contrary, the more one heart is kept empty, the more one's consciousness expands. One keeps on thinking and feeling, but now the thoughts and feelings will obey the stimuli of a pure consciousness. Where ideas and emotions are naturally serene and harmonious instead of obeying the impure consciousness of the level of the ego. Where ideas and emotions are almost always agitated and impulsive. Thus, the balance of thoughts and feelings is recovered, which is reflected in inner peace that accompanies one, wherever they may be. And that was the end of chapter 3. Thank you for listening.